Hey, hello, good evening, everyone. I'm so excited to be your host for this evening. And today is not just an ordinary day because we've gone week one, week two, week three. I think this should be the fourth week on this DevOps journey. Today I have a wonderful brother to introduce to you. He's a site reliability engineer. He has everything you want to talk about with regards to DevOps. And on the African space, I'm sure that most of you know the company Demos. He's with them, and he's going to be telling us a lot of things about. Introduction to apps. I'm going to leave the stage. I'm going to pass the stage on to him right now. Please help me welcome my brother.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much, Raphael. I would say a very big thank you for the Azure Meetup Nigeria team for the great work they are doing, basically, with regards to stuff like this. And yes, so I would want us to jump into the presentation just so that we don't waste too much time. So I will be sharing my screen. Just give me a moment. Okay. So give me 1 minute. All right, so basically we're here to talk about app DevOps, right? So for us, I'm sure most people that would either see this video or are currently watching now know what DevOps is, or at least have heard DevOps in one capacity or the other, right? And for us, I think people that are, I would say, the current knowledge expectations regards to these particular presentations will definitely be people that have had that experience with either automation engineering, infrastructure automation, and DevOps in general, right? But that is not to say if you don't have any idea what I'm saying, you can pick up one or two things for this presentation. So I would still try to keep things as simple as possible while also ensuring that I highlight certain technical details with regards to the presentation itself, right? And then yes, I think I need to apologize because I initially planned the demo from the beginning, but things didn't work out as planned. But I'll try to ensure that I elaborate as much as possible with regards to certain things we'll be talking about today. So for our course agenda, the first thing obviously that we want to talk about, especially for those who probably may not have so much of an idea with regards to what DevOps is, will definitely be us doing like a refresher on DevOps itself. And after that, we'll be taking a look at traditional application lifecycle processes. That is back in the day before things like automation with regards to pipelines came into play. How did companies, right, handle their application lifecycle, right, from business requirement gathering up to delivery of those requirements to the customers, right? And then from then on, we'll obviously look at why are we even looking at DevOps or app DevOps as the case may be. And after that, we'll look at tools, both general and then obviously since this is the Azure Meetup, we'll definitely be highlighting the Azure DevOps slash application tools, right? I would say tools that you can use in terms of implementing or automating deployments to application services to a large extent. And the final thing we'll be taking a look at will be certain considerations that we need to look at before we say, oh, we are making a commit to our source control service, whether it is GitHub, GitLab, whatever the case may be, right? There are certain things we should always have to look at with regards to our application development process and certain things that will make that application or that piece of code or feature a lot easier to run through the pipeline. Right. So let's jump right in. So yes, DevOps, right? I'm sure anyone that has worked in DevOps for a while knows that DevOps is basically the amalgamation of development and operations, right? And basically, in its ideal sense, because we know most of the time there usually used to be like a wall between the dev team and the operations team, right? And I think the whole idea behind DevOps was to find a way in which you could bring both parties together to operate as one well-oiled engine, right, with regards to in terms of how they start from the developer's development to code to the operations team implementing the infrastructure and giving feedback obviously to developers via monitoring and stuff along those lines. So yes, in simple terms, for those who have never heard of the word DevOps, DevOps is basically the merge of skills or requirements in terms to implement tasks of a developer or a dev, and skills and requirements required to implement tasks for an operations team, and then merging that together by also sticking it with obviously proper communication and collaboration to ensure proper running of the product, so to speak. So then obviously moving into DevOps Core or DevOps itself, we all know, for those of us obviously that have an understanding or are in the industry, know like the core phases of any pipeline or any form of DevOps type implementation, right? We all know that the first thing we always need to do is start with the code, because obviously that is what we will build on or acts as the foundation to what it is we intend to do, right? So obviously when we create that code intends, focusing on DevOps now, that code intends to, or is meant to run by being tested or by being built, right? So depending on the type of application that you are working with, we know what's it called. Some you may need like an interpreter, some you may need like a compiler, as the case may be, right? But at the end of the day, there needs to be some sort of build process that will happen. And obviously after that, we need to test. We need to know that the features that the customer is expecting, or for us devs, the business analyst or administrator gave to us, is actually met. So obviously that will need to be done, and then after we will then release like the first version, or some may say like MVP as the case may be, and then we now iterate that process by deploying that application into a live environment, right? It could either be a staging environment, it could be even a dev environment as the case may be, right? And then after that, this is where the upside down comes into play, whereby we are monitoring that environment. We're ensuring that the applications run on that environment continually stay up and perform the actions that are required of them as the case may be. And then the final part obviously is monitoring, right? Ensuring that we make informed knowledge with regards to how the application is faring within our environments, and when customers use the application, what is their experience in relationship with the application's performance. Do we have more customers coming from the UK, or do we have more customers coming from Nigeria or from Ghana, as the case may be, right? And that helps not just the technical side or the IT department, but also helps the business itself to make money, so to speak. And that is what we're doing all this for in the first place. Okay, so taking a step back, looking back in time, taking a look at what traditional application lifecycle processes was back in the day, right? We knew that there was a lot of manual aspects, and the only sort of automation you would see was in the separate parts. That is, the developers had automations probably for their own application development lifecycle, whereby while they write code, they have like test scripts that they will use to test and stuff like that. So that was usually the portion of any form of application deployment or development that they did during that point in time. But still, testing usually still used to be heavily manual, where you would have obviously QA manually taking a look at buttons, taking a look at, does this function do what it's meant to do? Does that function do what it's meant to do? And the case may be, right? And a lot of that during that period, it was always time. It took a lot of time, right? And there were always possibilities of errors, whereby if the QA caught something, you had to take it back all the way to the dev to make changes or make adjustments. And obviously that always would delay in terms of delivery times and schedules that have been set. So that was I would say, the problem statement, right, to a large extent with regards to application lifecycle management and in terms of even application development itself. Because even during that period, the devs never really had enough information to improve the application design and development processes. So although, yes, they had some level of automation, it was not fused based on knowledge gotten from the upside of things, whereby those ones knew that if I place this application in a Linux machine and I get over 1,000 requests, there's a possibility that the application will crash, right? So there was that disconnect to a large extent, and that's immensely affected the way applications were designed, and it usually increased the amount of time it took for applications to be delivered, right? Now, looking forward back into what the modern style of application development, obviously, when DevOps was introduced into the process, it gave us certain things, right? And those things pretty much answered the question of why are we using, or why do we include DevOps in our application deployment process, so to speak, right? So before I even go further, I think I would want to just highlight a bit why people keep seeing app DevOps everywhere. So this talk more or less focuses on the application side of things with regards to ensuring that what we have, right, before it runs through a pipeline, can we confidently say we've done all that we need to do as a dev team to ensure that when you run through that pipeline, the possibility of it failing is reduced, right? So all that we'll talk about in details when I'm highlighting certain things we need to take into consideration, right? But moving on, things that DevOps in general gave to us, right, was obviously speed, or I would say eventual speed, right? Because at the end of the day, everybody knows, or those of us that work within this space know that when you are setting up your pipeline, either for a client or internally, it's always like hell, right? Because a lot of things fail, a lot of things break, and it's always a pretty tough process. But you know that the moment you're able to get to that point of cruise control, whereby you run your pipeline and you see green, 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 green everywhere, it's definitely something that would make you happy, and then it gives you a lot of time, and you can boldly go to the management and say we will have this thing what's it called, deployed and ready to go at this particular time, and we're quite confident about it. And that doesn't just tie into like the larger infrastructure, as opposed to also how the devs now begin to make decisions with their application design tactics, right? They begin to now look at certain things based on the processes that have been developed and giving back to them by what they are currently monitoring within those applications after it has run through the pipeline. So even before it gets to a live environment, you can monitor things like build time. You can monitor things like how long does this application actually take to build, right? Those are the things that the DevOps process will give you, right? It gives you information with regards to the tests that we have written. Do we have anything like false positives that will are currently occurring within the pipeline? All that information are all application related, not so much infrastructure related. So that is where the focus of App DevOps is for this talk with regards to those processes and how it relates to your application development. So another thing obviously it gives you is agility. Agility in the sense that it ensures that you are always on top of what is going on, because obviously when that application will run through a pipeline, it's going to have things that it's running against to test, right? And if, say, for instance, you had one lazy developer somewhere that probably does and checked in one funny code on a Friday evening, we know that before he goes home, once he runs that pipeline, well, that depends on if he decides to sit and stay anyway. But if he runs that pipeline, it will definitely be caught by the test that you run. And then you can also get more information with regards to the actual performance of the various portions or the various features that cause the failure. And the beauty of something like chat ops is even if he's not around, an alerting system can be created whereby that situation is escalated immediately, right? And it gives you the ability to catch that issue on the go without it even getting to the QAs who will now do any form of manual or automated testing with test suites, right? So that is part of the beauty of DevOps with regards to applications, right? Then obviously the final thing is automation. And I don't think I need to talk too much about this because the only thing I would just say is automation has always been a part of application development in some way, right? With regards to when you are developing, writing test scripts, using lints and stuff like that, right? Just to make your life easier. But it has never been married together with operations prior to the advent of DevOps, right? So I think that's like the special thing that DevOps really brings to the table. The fact that you have automation across board that can be tied together from different parts of IT in general. So yeah, for me, those are like the three top reasons as to why one really needs to look into DevOps with regards to your application development, and the reason why it is important for even the devs to have a very strong understanding of the DevOps culture, because at the end of the day, DevOps is not just a way of implementing automation into your environment. It's really a mindset, it's really a culture that everyone, both technical and non-technical, needs to have in mind, right? I'm sure most of us are familiar with the CALMS framework, obviously, to a large extent. So obviously that in itself, for those who don't know, it's the culture, automation, lean, I'm thinking measurement and sharing, right? So those are like the pillars of DevOps to a large extent. If you now marry that into application development or into the way you think about your application development from the beginning, it really gives you a deep insight as to what are the things that are missing, what can we improve on, because you're not just making decisions based on your experience as a developer. You're making how do I put it? You're making knowledgeable decisions based on information that you have gathered, right, from the experience of or the usage basically of that application, so to speak. So moving on to the tools, right? For version control, because during that period after the developers or the dev team have created this application, there needs to be something that manages the various versions, right? And I'm sure for developers who will take a look at this video, they are very familiar with most of these tools, especially with regards to the version control tools. We all know GitLab. We all know, I myself, I'm not too familiar with CVS, but I'm familiar with GitLab and Git, and then Subversion, right? So all these tools basically come together or play various parts with regards to ensuring that you can create an application, manage an application, deploy an application, monitor an application, and then improve on the application, which obviously then brings out the beauty of DevOps, whereby it's a continued process. It's not how it was back in the day with something like the waterfall model, where you would get to the end of the point, make your documentation, and hand it over to the customer to start managing to a large extent. It's always a continuous process, right? That's why it works so well with the agile methodology, because they have very similar mindsets with regards to how they think software delivery and application lifecycle management should work, right? So most of these tools are tools that I'm sure some of us are familiar with, and they work obviously depending on the programming language that you are working with, right? So I would move on to just dive a little bit deeper, because obviously we're focusing on Microsoft Azure. So Azure gives us a special offering, right? Because if you notice, let me just go back to this slide. We have a range of tools that handle different processes, right? Which obviously can be integration hell, if I'm being honest, right? You could have versioning issues, you could have security lapses, you could have so many different problems with trying to marry all these different tools together to work for to create your DevOps pipeline, or even in your general application lifecycle management, right? So one beauty or one good thing that Azure has done is create obviously a dedicated service to handle all these processes, right? Even all the way to task assignments, right? So these different services pretty much handle from version control to creating actual pipelines, to running like your dedicated tests, and to obviously deployment with regards to artifacts. So what the artifacts obviously will do is like the final product of, oh, I've gone through the pipeline, it's passed, I've run tests against it, it's working, then it's the final product. It could be an image, it could be a how do I put it? I'm forgetting what Java uses now, but basically it's like the final product. And the beauty of this is it's easy for you to integrate it with any of the existing Azure services, like Azure App Service, like your Azure Virtual Machines, like your Azure Kubernetes services, your Azure Container Services, right? So they pretty much brought all the good things, right, that we love about DevOps, and brought it to one central platform, whereby we don't need to have integration issues, we don't need to have version issues. We pretty much just plug and play. And I would have loved to be able to give a demo on this, but things time, and then I wasn't able to finish up. But yes, so this is the focus for what's it called, DevOps, with regards to Azure and the services they offer on this particular point. And one thing I want us to know is it doesn't just stop here. Also, I know you can also bring certain tools and integrate it with Azure DevOps for your larger application management, for your larger DevOps strategy for your organization, right? So it's very easy for you to integrate it with various other tools from various stages of DevOps, right? So that whole process makes it a lot easy and makes it very interchangeable with regards to how you work with the service, right? So now moving on to what I feel like is, okay, yes, before we do that, so this just gives an example of what I was talking about, whereby you have an engineer that picks up a task, implements the task or a new feature on Visual Studio, checks that into the Azure repo service, which obviously works like your GitLab, your GitHub, as the case may be, and handles version control with regards to your application. It then, once that is done, it creates, or it runs through the test plans that have been created by maybe the administrator or maybe like the engineering lead or something along those lines, just to ensure that there are stop gaps at every stage of the deployment process, right? So after that, it runs through the pipeline, obviously, and if it's able to pass the test in the various stages of that pipeline, it would then be deployed to, for example, an Azure Web App, but it's not tied to an Azure Web App. I think that's one of the things I love about Azure, the fact that there's a level of flexibility with what you can do, right, with regards to the various services, and then everything is closely connected in the way whereby you don't really have to worry about integrating an external service, because you pretty much have services that can do what is needed to a large extent, right? So then moving on to what I feel like is the core focus of this talk, right? The reason why I call it consideration for app DevOps applications, because I know that right now a lot of companies are gradually migrating to the position where they want fully automated IT departments, right? Whereby we are not doing so much of everything from our infrastructure to the way our devs work to provisioning of environments. They want it to be automated, right? And these are just some of the things that I feel like, because I'm trying to focus quite heavily on the application side of things. So I will probably be using these with regards to or in relation to application development, right? So these things are things that I feel should be taken very seriously with regards to application being created or being designed, right? And I think if you take a look at the first one, the code quality, right? A lot of times you'll be surprised that I've had the opportunity to work with organizations where you think, oh, based on the size of the organization, they would follow due process and best practices with regards to the quality of their code in terms of technical depth, in terms of code coverage, as the case may be, right? But you'll be surprised that devs still have the right to, what's it called, push directly to master, right? As an example. So for me, I think the ensuring that proper steps and processes are put in place to catch issues that may be as a result of sometimes it may not even be the dev's fault, but I currently had a long week and he couldn't concentrate properly and he pushed some very funny code, right? But if there is no check against the code quality, obviously it's going to cause problems whereby that piece of code would have gotten almost all the way probably to the testing stage of the pipeline before it is cut, which personally I don't feel that should be the case, because if the whole organization is thinking with a DevOps mindset, then the engineering team in terms of the development team would have checks that they run personally, right? On say they do their developments on containers, or they do their development using Docker Compose within a dedicated environment, right? Just to ensure that all environments that they work on are identical, right? To a large extent, it is only right that they have unit tests that they run locally before they even push any code, right? So setting a baseline, I think, is for me what is most important, because the only way to ensure a high level of code quality is by ensuring that there are stop gaps before that piece of code even hits the pipeline in the first place. Because the mistake a lot of people make is they think, oh, the pipeline is meant to be the one that will catch all the issues based on the fact that unit tests have been created for it to run against. But that is not the case. The pipeline should, in an ideal situation, run through test as a second stage, right? It shouldn't be the only primary source of catching semantic or syntax type issues. It shouldn't be the only type, the only stopgap with regards to catching like basic issues, right? So I think setting, already added here, linting and stuff like that, like policies with regards to the organization and the team, where everyone can do. Sometimes it's quite difficult for some devs to be used to, especially if you are used to a different style of coding from where you are coming from, right? So setting those boundaries to ensure high code quality would ensure that when you check your code into this source control platform, it runs through the pipeline and it saves you a lot of time from having to keep going back to make changes, or you seeing your name on the chat and everyone is looking for you because you crashed some sort of environment, right? Then the next thing is code coverage. Now, code coverage ties pretty closely in a way to unit testing. I would say unit testing should be a prerequisite, right, for code coverage. Now, in order to ensure that every piece of code, so to speak, that is functions, modules, as the case may be, is properly vetted, I feel testing plays a very large role in that. I know that there are some platforms, I think of Visual Studio also, with regards to projects, you also see the code coverage of either that project or that module, excuse me, as the case may be, right? So I think that is another very key thing that a lot of companies don't take into consideration when they are having these conversations with their devs, right? I think, yes, you need to find a balance between ensuring that your devs follow standards and giving them the space to develop their own style of development, right? But I also believe that there should be a foundation, and code coverage should be strongly taken into consideration during that foundation or that baseline creation process. Because at the end of the day, if the thing with unit tests is if you don't start to create them from the moment you are writing the code, most likely will not create them down the line because it will just be too much work, right? So I think from the get-go, the policy which I always try to advise people is before you implement a feature, implement the test. And the reason why is because it will force you to take things into consideration and think it through before you begin to implement that feature or that function that you want to write. So that, for me, I think is also a very important part with regards to thinking on a larger scale of how your devs write code and how that will work in whatever pipeline that has been built and is being pushed to. And obviously, the elephant in the room is security. A lot of people talk about security, but it's one thing that I feel to a large extent is spoken about, but never really adhered to, just because it's a bit difficult. And I'll be honest, I've also been guilty of it from time to time, because in a way, security almost feels like as if it hampers speed, right? But one thing we all just need to understand is that at the end of the day, it's for the greater good, so to speak, right? And the reason why I placed it there is because also devs tend to think that security is the job of the ops guys, or it's the job of the security consultant, or is the job of the QA person, right? But I feel like it's a unified responsibility, and that's one of the things I actually love about working with Demos, because it's almost hammered into everyone's brain. Like, you need to have a security mindset, right? In your development style, in your development process, no matter how cool a feature is, it's pretty much useless if someone can get access to it and clear everybody's money, right? So from the style of development that you intend to implement, security has to be a major impact, right? Using environmental variables as opposed to hard coding values, right? Using secret managers in terms of when you want to use keys and stuff like that, ensuring that whatever links that you are using, right, are being accessed over HTTPS or not HTTP. So it's not only the job of the ops guy, it's not only the job of the security consultants, right? Their jobs actually is to just be the overhead and those vetting processes that are already in place. So if companies think about it from that point of view, where we know that, okay, we are laying this down as a ground rule for our devs, these are the requirements. Everyone needs to have OWASP on bookmark, right, on their laptops, because we need to continue to update ourselves and ensure that we know what it is that we're talking about when we are having conversations with regards to new features we need to build and stuff like that, because it makes it a lot easier for everyone else in the company, trust me, especially those working in ops, because a lot of developers just check in funny code based on some library or some dependency that they're using, that they have no idea what the security risks are with regards to it. So I also feel also it's the job of the upside and the senior members in the team to educate junior members why security is important in development, right? Because when you are bringing that piece of code and you check it into that pipeline, the pipeline is most likely going to catch it because it will have some security scanning enabled, right? And it's not only going to ensure that you are doing so much work because it's going to revert you back and the build will fail. So I feel like if these things are also looked at from the application point of view, where it touches every level, that is application development, the pipeline creation, the what's it called, deployment into these various environments, then things are a lot more easier in terms of how the whole company works together, right? So yeah, for me, that is one of the key points and things that I feel we should need to take into consideration when you are creating applications to run through a pipeline, right? Then obviously I will probably just skim through unit testing and integration testing. I sort of touched on it, and I will just reiterate what I said again. One policy I really do believe, and I know it's quite difficult, is before you implement a feature, implement its test. And the reason why is because it ensures that you have the required criteria, right? You know, at that point you're asking questions of, okay, what if, right? You're not just going ahead to implement. You're asking questions. You know that if something is not clear to you, you would have caught it at that point. But if you implement a feature, you're implementing a feature most likely with the knowledge of the base requirements, not really necessarily thinking about the conditionals that come into play, right? What are the possible things that a customer may want to use that feature for, right? But if you're implementing tests, it it forces you to ask those questions from the get-go, which obviously will improve your development process and the development style in general. Then integration testing also is another really key one. You develop a feature that it only seems to be working on your own local environment. When like the front end team needs to make a call to your API, they keep getting 404 or 503 or whatever the case may be, right? It's funny because a lot of times it's one of the key things that wastes time during a project deployment phase, right? So I also feel like ensuring that one thing also that I think is also very key is development teams need to be in sync, right? Before they can even say, oh, they want to be in sync with ops or they want to be in sync with the DevOps guys, because actually the role of DevOps is you should oversee what's the word? You should oversee pipelines that pretty much are running for your dev teams, right? So you're only just to come if there are any issues in the pipeline you can fix. You don't necessarily need to be there at every deployment they intend to do. So that is always the goal, right? So ensuring that during your integration testing, you are creating features, you are creating modules that take the fact that this particular feature is going to be a part of something larger, right? You're designing it where it's easy to just lift and shift into the larger picture, right? So for me, I think that is also quite important. Then the final thing, I think this is like my final point with regards to static dynamic code analysis. We all know in application development, those are two very important things, right? Because it makes it very easy for you to catch bugs, catch issues on the go, even before you are done writing the feature. As you are typing, you have those in your IDs, editors and stuff like that. So it's highly suggested that these things be also taken and implemented in your local dev environment so as to prepare and reduce the possibility of your applications or that feature or piece of code failing during the build process. So yeah, I think, I'm not sure how much time I have left, but I would want to leave us with these two quotes. The first one is from Jez Humble. He's one of the top Google SREs. You guys should Google him, it's pretty cool. He says DevOps is not a goal, but a never-ending process of continual improvement. And then obviously I had to piggyback off that and come up with my own, quotes, right? So I'm saying App DevOps is not a goal, but a mindset to continually commit to develop, design processes that make dev and ops less discernible and more synchronized as a well-oiled engine. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak. I think right now I'm open for questions. Okay, so I'll just quickly go through. Yeah, I think I can see some of the questions.
Okay.
Okay, so I can see a question from VJ, DevOps versus SRE, role and responsibility. Okay, so perfect. So DevOps basically, I think I would prefer to start with DevOps. Basically has a lot more to do with core implementation, design and development of pipelines, infrastructure sometimes, because obviously it also has to do with automation, right? And what's the last one? I can't remember, but I know the core two things, right? There are three of them. I just can't remember the last one. Is with regards to infrastructure automation, with regards to okay, yes, I remember now. Configuration management and also pipeline development and design development implementation and things along those lines, right? To a large extent. And the reason why is because obviously there is a need for someone to oversee those processes, right? While on the other side, SRE focuses a lot more on the application and post deployment of that application, whereby you are monitoring the application, you are ensuring that application is available, you are writing tests for the application. Sometimes you're even troubleshooting and writing code with regards to bugs on the application. So you are more closely linked to the dev team when you are a site reliability engineer, as opposed to a DevOps engineer, whereby you have like an overall view of automation, everything with regards to automation of the development activities and the application activities is your main concern. So for me, I think that's like the main difference between those two roles, so to speak.
Okay, we have other questions.
So any other questions?
Someone, David Emmanuel, was asking if you can recommend for him documentation for setting up CI/CD pipeline or full stack application with separate backends.
Okay, we separate backends. Okay. Okay. For that, a lot of times it will really depend. I can see here you're saying .NET Core, Angular, MySQL. Because I always tend to always prefer to focus on the application itself, right? So I know that with Azure DevOps, you should be able to implement this, right? And the good thing with that is it gives you a central point, right? With regards to being able to deploy those applications or that application into either app services or deploy them as containers, right? So Azure DevOps, I feel like should be able to handle this fairly easy to a large extent. And then another option also is GitLab. GitLab also should be able to help you handle like creating those pipelines with regards to, because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter the application or the programming language or whatever the case may be. Most of what is usually focused on is how it will run within the pipeline, because the devs will most likely be creating the test or the unit test for that application. So those are probably like my two recommendations, Azure DevOps and GitLab.
Okay, I think those are the only two questions that those are the only two questions that we have for now.
Okay.
Okay, but in the meantime, I made a promise to show people that want to write Microsoft exam how to get a free voucher. So
Okay.
we're going to be posting. It's actually yeah, sometime. It's so we're going to be posting the link shortly. It's actually a cloud skill challenge. Okay, so we all know how cloud skill challenge works. If you go through all the exercises at the end of the month, you get the voucher in your email. So the link has been posted. So if you want to write the exam free, anyone that wants to write the exam free, please register. Anyone that wants to write any exam free, sorry, any exam free.
Okay, I can see a question here asking if the cloud skill challenge is only for the UK. I don't know if you have an
No, no, no,
answer
no.
for that, Rafa.
Even though they say UK, once anyone that registers gets the opportunity. Like most of the ones I think so far I've done two, they were meant for US,
Okay.
but still I got the vouchers and scheduled my
Okay, I might
exams.
also take advantage of it too.
Sorry guys, if any of our team members here, please help us post to our WhatsApp group that the only time they will get the opportunity for the soap is if they come to we only have 15 minutes before the end of the session. If they come here, they'll get it.
Yeah.
If not, it's done. Because I can't post right now. Unless David, can you take me out of the show so I post to the group? Or you help me to post to the group?
I'm sure you should be able to help us with that. So please let's ask questions. If you have any questions, let's feel free.
So as a DevOps engineer, because one of the things I'm sure of people in our group that kind of demotivated. I see that some people are just there, they're just looking, they want to see a push before they make an attempt. So what can you say to such people? What can you tell them about the outlook? Okay, before you continue, please answer Vijay's question.
Okay. Okay. As for I think what's it called now? Azure Monitor gives you like a full overview of most of those services. Although I don't think that's like a dedicated what's it called monitoring tool for Azure DevOps, but for other like monitoring tools with regards to pipeline monitoring and stuff like that, you can use anywhere from Elk to what's it called now, Datadog to New Relic. So there are quite a number of like general monitoring services that you can integrate into your pipelines where you get reports. And then also, I know most of these CI/CD pipeline platforms have reports that are generated based on the pipeline usage. So you can obviously determine different periods with regards to your build time and the total number of builds, total number of failed builds, total number of passed builds. So that will really give you like a really deep insight with regards to how your is faring.
We have another question in the
Okay, in instances of app development, how effective is the creation of application pipelines for multiple stages? What's the best advice? Okay, so for me, I'll tell like the whole reason why you create like a multi-stage type environment is just to give an extra level of assurance, right, before it gets to the deployment. But personally, me, I always feel like the deployment should happen to dev, right? Then from dev, it's being promoted to staging and dev as the case, and prod as the case may be, right? So, but on the larger scale of things, if you have proper processes set on both your pipelines and within your dev team, you may just simply have your dev and then your production. There may be no need for staging, but a lot of people just have staging so that from the infrastructure side, and also, yeah, one other thing I forgot to mention, if you have like immutable architecture whereby you know that all your deployments happen via either scripts, whether it is Terraform, whether it is CloudFormation, ARM templates or whatever, right? You almost take away the need for extra environments, thereby obviously reducing your overall cost. So for me, I think it always depends on what are you pushing out and then what are the stop gaps before you reach those environments. And if that is done properly, then you may just have two environments that you are deploying to, right? But if that's not the case, then obviously it's absolutely fine to deploy to all three, that is dev, staging, and production. Okay, I think you're asking a question about the challenge also.
Anyone can join. They join, they learn. Chooks, anyone can join. The purpose of the challenge, you have a sequence of lectures. Lessons to go through. Once you finish all the lessons, you are qualified for the voucher. And if you really put your heart into it, finishing the lessons, completing lessons makes you ready to take the exams. So yeah, anyone can join.
Yeah, and then I also want to just add this. I don't know if you have any other questions, but it's not like I'm trying to sell DevOps or anything. But I think there is a major skill gap, right, in the global market with regards to DevOps, site reliability engineering, and things that are heavy on the automation side. So I really would want to encourage anybody out there that it's nothing out of this world, right? As long as you have like a strong foundation in either development, because my background is in development. So if you have a strong background in development or even infrastructure, something that you can get started as long as you are consistent, right? And in max between 6 months to a year, you are on your journey, right? And obviously the pay is quite good. So it's something that I definitely would want to encourage people, because I know a lot of people ask me and talk about, oh, they are scared to get started and stuff like that. But as long as you have that basic I even know people that with very little IT knowledge, they started it, right? Focused on a lot of task related stuff. And now they're doing quite well. So something that people should really get into, because there's a real shortage of like quality talent. So we're looking for how we can build that up, and I hope I get a chance to do more demo related talk, so to speak, in the future.
All right. Since we still have since we still have a little time, because there's this concept that I've been flying around in the group, easy money. So, what's the minimum package you think? What's the minimum salary you think DevOps engineers receive?
Okay, so I think that's highly dependent on obviously the level of skill, just like any other job, right? And then also depends on the location, because I've heard of DevOps engineers in Nigeria making anywhere from 500,000 to over £1 million comfortably month on month, right? So I also obviously differentiate with site reliability engineering, and I feel SREs even make more because it's almost like a subsection of DevOps, so to speak. So those two, I know it's quite lucrative in the long run, and if one can build your skills fairly quickly, it's something that there's always opportunity for growth because it keeps improving and it keeps changing and new things keep coming out. So yeah, I would just give that range basically for Nigeria.
But guys, he said Nigeria, but I want to blow you guys' mind a little bit. Okay, a friend of mine called me yesterday. The salary they were offering him is €100 per hour. €100 per hour. He's required to work 40 hours a week. Calculate
Yeah,
that.
and even way more outside the country, it's even ridiculous. Ridiculous.
No, it's remote. It's remote. Calculate
Yeah, no,
that.
I mean like companies outside the country tend to pay a lot more in terms of like the job role. So I'm not even surprised at all that that your friend got that sort of offer. So it's like I said, quite lucrative, and something that if one can get really skillful in it, then you definitely be set apart. That's for sure.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I think if we don't have any question in the next 2 minutes, we'll be rounding up. And also, Femi Ola, just seeing you here now. If you did not join us earlier, I think you joined the previous session, the Azure admin. Okay, you joined the Azure admin, and during that session, I promised to share the soap. The soap has already been shared. It has been shared. Aurelua, he's asking one question. He said,
okay.
how do you accelerate your skillfulness?
You do by learning. I think for anything in life, right, that you really want to get good at, you do by learning. It's one thing to come here and talk, but at the end of the day, like even as much as we are encouraging, the reason why we're encouraging everybody to get certifications is to validate their knowledge, right? And the nature of our job is very hands-on. So the more hands-on you are, the more you improve your skill. The more problems you solve, the more you improve your skill.
Great, great, great. Guys, we still have 5 more minutes.
So please, questions. I tried to ensure I kept the presentation short just so that to give opportunity for questions, because the last one I did, there wasn't enough time.
No, there was a question I was asking before someone asked something
Okay.
else. For those
Yes,
that
please,
are really demotivated, how do you think they can start? Because I know a few people in that group, they are scared. I know a particular guy, he's on my LinkedIn and he's in that group. He has like 16 certifications, and guess they are all foundation. All foundation. So I think he's scared. So for someone like that, where would you recommend that he starts from? Since you've been in the industry, you've been in SRE, you've been in DevOps, and you've eaten Azure money, remote money. So encourage him how he can start so that he'll be like you.
Okay, so I think I would say for those who feel intimidated, right, start small. Like you don't necessarily need to get like the top dollar project or whatever, right? The beauty of automation is that you can apply automation to almost anything, right? In terms of even like a small website that you've developed, practice deploying that into a pipeline, right? You can get a sample application from GitHub. There are quite a number of them, right? Use that. GitLab has a free account, I believe. Use that to create pipelines. In terms of resources, free resources, YouTube has a ton of them, right? And you don't need to, you can set like small goals for yourself. Before the end of this month, I want to have an understanding of how pipelines work, right? You may never even start practicals yet. We just want to have a very strong foundation on that, right? Next month, peak implementation. Download a sample application, right? Test it locally to be sure it's working. Then create a sample pipeline for it. It doesn't have to have all the bells and whistles. You could have a basic, you check the coding, it runs through a pipeline and say, oh, pipeline passed, and you return an echo, right? That is the first stage of the whole process. And from there, you realize that once you get comfortable with that, you can take on another challenge. So I feel the mistake a lot of people make is they see these really large pipelines running all the bells and whistles and everything, and they get scared that, oh, more, where do I want to even start from, you know? But at the end of the day, all those things started from just one very simple pipeline, right? A pipeline that had the build stage, the test stage, and the deployment stage before it now began to branch out into other things, right? So I think that should always be the rule of thumb for people who are looking to start extremely simple. It could be just one page, HTML page that you write hello world on that page. Go to GitLab, create a very simple two-stage pipeline where it's, takes that thing, runs it against a test that checks, does hello world exist? Yes, it exists. And then deploy into a very small server that you can get for free anywhere. That is, you have started your DevOps journey from there, right? So from then on, you begin to build. And as long as you are consistent, in 6 months, when you look back, you won't believe how quickly you have grown, right? And then another mistake I notice a lot of people do is, even before you get the knowledge, you start to apply for positions. And then if you're lucky enough to get an interview, they ask questions and you are lost, right? So as much as I feel like once you study interview questions, at the same time, have some real life knowledge that you can apply. You don't have to necessarily have worked for a company. You could have done a personal project that you can elaborate on. I can assure you, if you do 6 months consistently of this stuff, by the time you are done on your 6 months, you have enough of knowledge to talk about in whatever interviews that you are doing, even before you get your first proper job.
Awesome answer. So, ladies and gentlemen, okay, before we round up, David Emmanuel, I would like to encourage you to continue with us. I'm sure that this opportunity for this challenge that came up, just register, and even though you want to write Azure admin, you might also be interested in any of the ones that are there. But if you say it's really AZ104 that you want to write, please stay with us throughout the journey. I believe by the time we finish all the series, another opportunity will come up. Thank you.
Yep.
So it's been nice having you, Oreoluwa.
Thank you very much, everyone, for having me.
I'm sure that very soon you'll come again and speak to us like this.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thanks a lot, guys.
So bye-bye, everyone. Oh, wait, before we go off, tomorrow we are starting something different, AI session. And if you know that DevOps is not your thing, Azure admin is not your thing, just come and listen. You might get interested in AI. Who knows? So it's 3 p.m. No. It starts at 6 o'clock, 6 to 7. It was initially 3 p.m. We agreed and adjusted the time to 6 p.m. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.